This is wonderful, and I want to welcome everyone. Without further ado, I, I want to welcome everyone to our Lunch and Learn that we've been doing for several weeks now, hosted by the New Jersey Cannabis Business Association. I'm the president, Ed DeVeaux, and have really had a great time doing this. Inglesino, Webster, Wyciskala, and Taylor. In fact, they were one of our guest speakers in the past with Wal McCoy. So again, that's Inglesino, Webster, Wyciskala, and Taylor. And we want to welcome our new sponsor, Puffin. Puffin is a cannabis investor and entrepreneurial firm. They are one of our key sponsors. I want to thank Carla Pollack of ABS, who is basically running this program. And as I pull up my notes, we'll get right into today's discussion. I'd like to thank our guests. If you've been around the cannabis communications scene in New Jersey for any time, you know that New Jersey Cannabis Insider is at the forefront of reporting on the cannabis industry, and we want to thank them. They've been a true friend to the Cannabis Business Association. So I'd like to welcome our guests, Enrique Lavin, Jelani, and Kristen. Jelani Gibson and Kristen Ligas. I want to welcome you guys to today's forum. I know that Kristen and Enrique have some work that they've got to do, so I apologize again for being a little bit late, but I want to turn it over to you, Enrique. So, New Jersey Cannabis Insider, how did it get started? What's its purpose? Tell us about NJCIS.
Sure. And thanks, Ed, for having us. And NJCBA, yes, we've been working closely with the organization really since the launch in late 2018. So we've been going at this for the duration of the Governor Murphy's administration. The idea was that we would launch something out of NJ.com to serve the cannabis industry, believing, like everyone else here, that with a Democrat in office and both chambers controlled by the Democrats, that legalization would happen overnight. And we all know the story from there. But we've really learned a lot, right? All of us in those 3 years. We came out with the subscription service to serve the industry, the business community. What I like to say, the CEOs of the MSOs that are in place right now, and the CEOs of future CEOs, and everyone in between. The model for us really changed in the middle of this during the expansion of medical, for us to enter into the event space. We saw a great need. Listening to the community that they like to network more often in a safe spot with serious people. So this is how we entered in the event space. I'll pass it over to Kristen to talk about that a little bit more, but I want to talk about who's on staff as well. Jelani came on board as our content lead, and he's my assistant editor. We put together the basically every week we decide what the coverage is going to be. A lot of it is obvious, a lot of it is nuanced. It's a lot of digging under rocks and using our connections that we've had as an establishment here with the Star Ledger and NJ.com. We have Amanda Hoover, who's as you know, our lead cannabis reporter for NJ.com and Star Ledger and affiliated newspapers. So she's like our general audience reporter. Sue Livio, who's been covering the medical marijuana space since it started more than a dozen years ago. And Jonathan Salant, who's in Washington, D.C., is NJ.com's Washington, D.C. correspondent, but for us, he delivers a column every week talking to us about what's going on nationally. And of course, we have the support of the entire NJ.com, NJ Advanced Media apparatus, our marketing department, and the family of news publications across the country. Kristen came to us from Advanced Local, our parent company, and I'd like her to talk to you guys a little bit more about what she does for us in terms of events.
Yeah, I see a lot of familiar names here from attendees at our events before. So hi guys. As Enrique mentioned, we've been doing events since 2019 we started. And we've grown significantly. And of course, throughout the last year, we've had to make some changes, but, we put on a really nice program throughout our years with full day conferences, with general sessions and keynotes and panel discussions. And of course, networking, which is super important. So our larger sort of bookend conferences that we host in the spring and fall, we tend to feature like 2 different tracks for those who are just getting into the business so they can get the information and meet the right people, and then a track for more advanced people to continue on their journey. And we're really excited because the reason we're together today in the office is because we are scouting venues for our fall conference. So we're looking to get back in person. We've been using a great platform called Remo for the last year, and it's really helped us deliver a very similar and engaging experience, as close to the in-person experience as possible, and we've really enjoyed it. But we listen to our attendees, and we know everyone's eager to get back in person and meet one another. So we're scouting some great venues today. We were at the Avenel Performing Arts Center. We're going to Carteret Performing Arts Center, and trying to find some place that would work well for us. And of course, we're looking into the hybrid options as well. So we're learning a ton, but we'd love to, hear from you guys. Like, would you want to be in person? Would you plan to attend, online? What's important to you? Is networking more important than, panel discussions? Where are we with your thoughts? I think that's really important for us to understand as we continue our planning journey at through the end of the year and into next year. We dropped the link in there, but I'll send it again to our event next week, Tuesday and Wednesday. It's going to be on the Remo platform. So if you have not experienced this virtual event, we highly recommend you guys join. You really have a great opportunity to meet new people from the comfort of your home. Don't have to take the day off of work, don't have to drive anywhere, and you really get to meet people from all over, not just New Jersey. We've seen people from California, Texas, Illinois, of course, New York, Pennsylvania, all over, Michigan. So it's a really awesome experience. So we highly encourage you guys to join.
Didn't we have a discount code for NJCBA members?
Yes, we certainly do. I'm going to make it right now. We really work on the fly here, guys. Here's your code. And that's for how much off, Enrique?
It's 20%. Is that
perfect?
So
I'm going to put this in here right now.
Yeah, please plug that in.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't thank you enough because not only have you allowed me to be a participant in your conferences, and I found it to be a great, worthwhile experience. I learned a lot. I got to share a lot. So thank you for doing that. So please share with our participants today how they can register for the upcoming conference, which again, I thank you for allowing me to participate.
And thank you, Ed, for coming and supporting with your knowledge. Of course, we're always eager to hear what you and your community are thinking about and what you need, the information that you're looking for. As I've mentioned to you in conversation before, and several people here who we've spoken to in the past, is we're concierge journalism, right? Our job is to get the information that you're seeking, and if you ask us for something and we don't have it right away, we'll go get it to the best of our ability. We'll of course share it with you first, and then share it with the rest of the community, because if you're asking for it, it's likely someone else is in need for it as well. One thing that I would add that for next week, if you guys haven't tuned into what we're doing, is that we're focusing on municipalities. We know this is a big topic of conversation. We dedicated probably the last 3 issues in one way or another, talking about how business people entering the space, or who are in the space, approach municipalities, and talking to consultants. Last week we pulled several attorneys, and each of them had great insight. And so we built around that. We have a couple of panels next week dedicated to that. We invited Mayor Kovac, who's the president of the League of Municipalities, and Mayor Warren from City of Orange, who's the vice president of the Urban League of Municipalities. And both of them are obviously as mayors of their own towns. Mayor Kovac is Clinton Township?
Town of Clinton.
Town of Clinton. Sorry, I got it wrong. We have to correct that. And so her town obviously is smaller and I want to say less diverse than Orange, and so they have different priorities, right? And that's what we want to learn from folks who are getting questions from all over and those who have developed answers. The other piece of this is that we have been polling a great number of municipalities. You know, we have 565 in the state. We're up to 300 municipalities that we have called or tracked through our tracker. We started this tracker during medical marijuana just to see what towns were banning, what towns were voting on ordinances to welcome either a medical marijuana dispensary or operation. And now the same is true for whether they're going to open up shop for cannabis businesses. We hope to roll that out next week. We're putting finishing touches on that. But that's something that we heard from the community that is needed, is understanding what towns are thinking. And we also want to help educate, a lot of the leaders in these towns on what's the best decision for them, whether they ban it or not, if they make the right decision with information all the information that's available.
That's fantastic. And look, you guys do a super job when it comes to making sure information gets out and that it's timely, that it's relevant to the cannabis community, not just those people who touch the plant, but for all of the ancillary businesses as well. So I know you guys have to go, and again, Kristen and Enrique, I want to thank you for everything that you do. And before I continue the conversation with Jelani, I do want to recognize where I am today. I do try to get to different venues, people who support us, and I just happened to be today at Jamie's Cigar Bar and Lounge in Clifton, New Jersey. So I'm here at Jamie's. Donna, who's helping me out, is somebody who is fantastic, made sure that I had a great spot in the restaurant and cigar lounge. So I know many of you are looking for other lounges, but just want to let you know, Jamie's in Clifton. So no, you can't have certain products yet, but just want to thank Jamie's in Clifton and Donna for being great hosts today.
Great.
Your office is way more fun than ours today. I love it. Real quick, that code is active, guys. Thank you for being patient. So it's NJCBA for 20% off. I'll drop the link in the chat again.
I forgot to mention, I don't know if Ed did this in the newsletter, but you also have, as members of NJCBA, a 25% discount. It's the best discount you can possibly get for Cannabis Insider, the publication, for an annual subscription. So if you're not on board with us already, consider that discount. It's still active. NJCBA. All you have to do is use that code during checkout, and hopefully if we haven't met you already, we'll meet you at one of our events. And thank you so much again, Ed, for having us.
So much, Enrique. Kristen, thank you guys for taking the time to share with us today and for telling us about New Jersey Cannabis Insider. Again, great work you guys do. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. We'll see you next week, Ed.
Take care.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, guys.
Bye. And so, again, I want to welcome everyone once again to our Lunch and Learn. We do this every Friday at 12 noon. And look, we try to bring you all kinds of information that helps you, whether you're interested in touching the plant or currently are a license holder, but are looking to enter the industry. And one of the, and I see names as Enrique had pointed out. So Guy, I want to thank Guy for being on. Lefty, I saw you, man, good to see you. Ken Walski, thank you so much for all the work that you all have done with respect to advocacy and supporting the Cannabis Business Association just want to thank you all. Please, as Enrique mentioned, your membership in the NJCBA is critical not only for us to continue to bring you these great speakers and great insights, but you do get discounts on things. And so as we prepare to pull together an in-person event, hopefully by the end of the month, I do want to now speak with Jelani Gibson. Jelani and I have had great conversations with respect to the industry, what it means from not just a commerce standpoint, but from a social justice, social advocacy, economic parity. And, today's topic, many of us have seen a lot more happening with respect to cannabis media. Cannabis media still tends to be this entity, this force. And it's interesting because you'll see certain names that directly reference the industry, they directly reference the plant. And then you have other, I'll call it corporate names. And so, Jelani, look, you've been around the block. You are absolutely one of the shining stars with respect to the cannabis conversation. So I'd like you to take a couple of minutes and share from the standpoint, and this has been the question, is cannabis media still fringe or is it mainstream? The things that you do are very much impactful and actually, look, and I don't mean to say this in a very light way, but it's serious journalism. You do things that are seriously journalistic in nature. So please tell us about your experiences and whether we're still fringe or if we're mainstream.
Yeah, I mean, the conversation on whether or not we're fringe or mainstream, I think it oftentimes depends on what state you're in. What you usually see is when you have legalization come through, that's when it goes from the fringe to the mainstream, because it basically is like an economic move, right? It used to be the fringe economy and now it's the mainstream economy. I myself, as a journalist, have always questioned the ethics of only covering economies that are mainstream, because we are an institution of power ourselves. Many people oftentimes think of journalists as these people that give voice to the voiceless. And I say that I don't necessarily agree with that mission. I don't necessarily think it's my job to give voice to the voiceless so much as to figure out why certain people are voiceless in the first place so that they can have that voice in society. And so when you cover the legalization movement and what it is, first it used to be people like Marijuana Moment and things like that. Now you do have reporters at the Star Ledger, Politico, things of that matter. What we have to talk about in cannabis media is moving cannabis media more away from the strict legislative conversation and more into the societal conversation. I would say that is essentially the next mainstream front of cannabis media. A lot of cannabis media usually exclusively focuses on what legislation is being passed, what legislation isn't being passed. And what I've always simply said about, equity and social justice and business reporting is that usually business reporting in journalism was considered this thing where you just looked at the quarterly earnings and you reported on the laws that were being passed in relation to those quarterly earnings. And that was very much at odds with a lot of the beliefs of journalists of color in the career field who had an understanding and knowledge that in the same way that inequality was weaved into the DNA of how we've conducted business in this country, so too must our coverage. And so, we can't act like business reporting, quote unquote, is different from equity. Because, if you look at slavery and colonization, that was an economic apparatus. So was Jim Crow, so was segregation, so was Reconstruction. And so, social justice and economic justice, one thing that I can say is that inequality has always been a business. Inequality has always been a business, and it has always been a very profitable business for certain demographics. So in the same way that inequality is a business, so too must we weave equality into our reporting. It can't happen in a journalistic silo. We need to weave equality into how we do business as reporters, how we pull our sources, who we choose for our panels, and the type of questions that we ask, of our panels. And so, I'm coming from the Kansas City Star, where I used to be a gun violence reporter, and it was my job to look at the root causes of gun violence and things like that. My specific expertise was police gun violence and police union corruption, but we also had to talk about the public health aspect, in addition to, redlining, things of that nature. And so you basically take that training over into the cannabis space, and what you've essentially seen is usually who you chose as a cannabis reporter would be the business reporter or the crime reporter. And what's making cannabis media change is that we're starting to pull different people from different beats like me onto the beat. And so we're starting to say, okay, this person was an investigative gun violence reporter that looked at the public health ramifications of gun violence. Let's put them on that beat. This person used to be a reporter that looked into activism and teachers unions and healthcare. Let's go ahead and put that person on the beat. And so much of what cannabis media is becoming and has become, the external aspect is which states are legalizing, and the internal aspect is what type of reporters we pull for these beats as they become more mainstream, and what the background of those reporters are.
So, Jelani, do you think that there's an underlying tone if the reporter happens to have been a crime reporter in the past? Is there a difference? Was there an underlying tone or a slight, if you will, if it was one reporter over another?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we've talked about in the journalism career field, especially during the George Floyd protests. There was just as many racial reckonings in newsrooms as there were in other industries. And one constant debate within journalism has been what to do with the crime beat, and whether or not the crime beat in and of itself is an ethical construct. Can the crime beat be reformed, or should we simply abolish the crime beat altogether? What are the ethics of continuing to put, mug shots in papers, which is a policy that we've gotten, rid of for the most part, very recently. We put people's mug shots in newspapers, but then we don't ever follow up on whether or not these people were found guilty and things like that. And so, crime reporting was traditionally seen as the police tell you what happened, and then you write what the police tell you what happened. And, there's always been this push by journalists of color to say, look, it's our job to cover institutions of power. An institution of power is policing. When I was a gun violence reporter, I said the police are an institution of gun violence, and I understand that. Also, during my time in the military, we have a different relationship depending on the type of institutions we cover. But back in the day, you used to have relationships where reporters would actually have offices that were inside the police station. The police used to set aside room for reporters to sit inside their police station and do reporting there. And so as you've seen time go on, you've seen us get more and more separated from automatically believing police narrative. But what I've always said is that there's a specific reason why the crime beat needs to change, and there's a specific reason why you need scrutiny. First, the police are an institution of power. We don't automatically believe politicians. We don't automatically believe the Catholic Church. But for some odd reason, there was still this undercurrent that for some odd reason, we would automatically believe the police. We don't even automatically believe the military when they tell us things. But there was still this one final frontier in why do we automatically believe the police when they say, here's what happened in a report. And so crime reporting used to be, you're going to go to the public information officer and you're going to hear what the police said. You're going to hear what they said about the cannabis arrest. You're going to hear what they say about the violence that's going on in the neighborhood. And then you're going to talk to a lot of the people that are on good terms with the police. And then you're going to talk about cannabis from that perspective, or crime from that perspective. And what cannabis reporting requires is a understanding that the war on drugs was a fundamentally wrong and racially biased and an unethical war to wage in the first place. And that is oftentimes at conflict with what many of the tenets of traditional crime reporting has been. And so I would say that when you move other people from different beats into cannabis reporting, it's a matter of getting different types of coverage and different types of question and different types of writing.
Jelani, if I can summarize it, I just had this thought because as I gave certain shout outs, in essence, you try to bring truth to an untrue situation. There were so many untruths and dissuasive arguments and propaganda about the industry, about the culture, that it was this clouded situation. And now here you are trying to bring truth to it as people. Again, I give shout outs to Guy Liberty, to Ken Walski, to Lefty Grimes, people who tried to bring truth to this untrue situation. And then you have others. And how difficult has it been in the last decade? How difficult, or how much more easy has it become to bring truth to a untruthful situation?
This is something that I've oftentimes struggled with, not just as a journalist in the workforce, but it's also something I fundamentally understood as, also being in the teaching space of journalism school, is that you have two apparatuses that essentially mold the media. You have two apparatuses that essentially mold how journalists do their job. And those two apparatuses are oftentimes the educational apparatus and then the workforce apparatus. And the educational apparatus and the workforce apparatus are oftentimes just reinforcing what the other believe. And I've always said that, in the past decade, things have gotten slightly better, but we're still not where we need to. We're still not where we need to be. When people say we want to do good journalism, my first question is, we want to do good journalism for who, right? Do we want to do good journalism for our majority white audience, or do we want to do good journalism for these people who've been locked up? Do we want to do good journalism for the people who aren't our customers, the people that we haven't reached? And I think that's the overall racial reckoning that journalism has been trying to navigate, is that what we have described as good journalism in our schools, what we have described as good journalism in the workforce, has never been good journalism for everyone, and has never lived up to the ideal of being good journalism for everyone. And I don't think that's just the story of journalism. I also think that's the overall story of American society, of how we've tried to reconcile the simultaneous failings and ideals of our society with what we actually are, with what we actually are doing. We call it a justice system, but it is clearly, favoring one outcome over the other. Can we truly call that justice? We have, you have cannabis revenue. A certain part of it is dedicated to policing impaired driving infractions when New Jersey already has some of the highest amount of police officers that are trained in drug recognition. Why, if we were going to give money to the police from cannabis revenue, then why didn't that money go to more reform-minded efforts? Should the police be involved in the cannabis revenue business at all? I mean, these are the type of questions that have oftentimes been taboo that me and other journalists of color are just quite frankly very unapologetic about. And so it's not just a matter of fighting that fight in the workforce, it's also a matter of fighting that fight in the schools that train people to be in the workforce. It's a matter of faculty. It's a matter of talking about what type of research is done, what type of journalism research is done at the faculty level. And so I've always said it's a two for one sale out here.
Look, I'm going to use the vernacular. Damn, that's deep, brother. I'm telling you, that is. So you touched on something a moment ago, and I want to come back to it because I actually had this conversation in one form or another. When you look at the community, the cannabis community, the cannabis culture, it is in fact diverse. Mm-hmm. How do you either represent or present to the cannabis community, knowing that it is so diverse? It's got to be a challenge. I mean, look, our membership is everyone from those who touch the plant to the ancillary businesses to the canna curious. It's got to be a challenge. How do you approach communicating to such a diverse community and culture?
Well, I feel like that's essentially the duty that all journalists have on their beat, that this is a mission that is entrusted to all of us, regardless of the subject matter that we deal with. We are a profession that was laid out in the Constitution for a reason. And the specific way that we break down and simplify things is we ask ourselves, we kind of work backwards. The way I do is I kind of work backward. I ask myself, what do I want the outcome of this article to be? Like, what do I want people to be educated about? What do I want them to take away from it? And then I start plugging and pulling, people that I feel can essentially serve that outcome and goal. And the first thing I have to ask myself is, am I asking an ethical and nuanced outcome is my outcome ethical and nuanced? And it's also important to understand that when you talk about ethics, there's more than just westernized ethics. There's more than just the ethics of Clinton, right? The ethics of Newark might be completely different. And so I ask myself, are we presenting an outcome that is nuanced and ethical? And then once I decide what that outcome is, I start working backwards and I say, okay, which sources are the best qualified people to speak on this? Is there diversity in, of course, ethnicity, but is there also diversity of institutional and non-institutional sources? And that's essentially how I kind of like to work backwards.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So as we're I'd like to start winding down our conversation. And before I do that, I just want to thank you so much for your time and what you have brought to not only the industry of media, but to the cannabis culture and community here in New Jersey. I know you've been welcomed so many times in different ways. I just want to thank you and welcome you to New Jersey. So I'll ask this: what has been your most difficult conversation as it pertains to New Jersey's in growing market, enlarging market? What has been your most difficult conversation?
My most difficult conversation, and I think it'll be a difficult conversation for other markets as well, is we keep on talking about the legacy market. We need to bring the legacy market in. We need to bring the legacy market in. The thing is that the legacy market is majority Black and brown. So we're not just talking about bringing the legacy market in, we're talking about bringing in majority Black and brown revenue. And so if the cannabis market does make good on its promise to bring in the legacy market, you will essentially be looking at the first economic apparatus in America where the majority of the revenue is being controlled by Black and brown people. We have not seen that construct in America since its founding on such a level. And so the real question is, are our fellow white counterparts actually ready to see that? Because there's no way you could bring in the legacy market and not have the majority of the market controlled by Black and brown people, because that's what the majority of the market is. And the legacy market is still responsible for the majority of the revenue. And so is America ready to see a market, an economic market, where the majority of the revenue is controlled by Black and brown actors? And that's the $1 trillion question, I would say.
Thank you so much, Jelani. So in closing, I do not want you to grade me as a journalist. I don't do this as a profession, but man, I really appreciate it. You can always give me feedback afterwards. I do want to hear what you think. But any closing thoughts, any closing remarks before we adjourn today's discussion?
I mean, my closing thoughts is that I think that journalists, not just cannabis reporters, but all reporters have an ethical duty to make themselves available in this capacity, that we need to hop out into the public more and make ourselves more available to be willing to answer questions, to be on that other side of being interviewed. You know, we have to practice what we preach, and we have to make ourselves more available to the public, because we do serve the public. And so I believe that the overall trend towards media overall should be journalists making themselves more available to the public, and to let the public know what's going on behind closed doors, what their ethical mentality is. And I think that makes for a much more better society and a much more transparent society. And that as journalists, we have to practice the very things that we catch. You know, journalism, and specifically investigative reporting, is just the art of assassinating lives for a living. But we ourselves have to be very cognizant of the lies that we do and don't tolerate ourselves in this space.
Jelani Gibson, thank you so much. Jelani Gibson of New Jersey Cannabis Insider, a part of NJ.com. Again, a huge thank you for participating in today's Lunch and Learn. I want to thank everyone that attended today. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Inglesino, Webster, Wyciskala, and Taylor, and Puffin, Cannabis Entrepreneurs and Investors. I want to thank you all for attending. I will see you next Friday. Our scheduled guest is Ease. Next Friday, the company Ease, we'll have them on next Friday at our Lunch and Learn, every Friday at noon. Want to thank you all very much for coming, and look forward to staying in touch with everyone. Take care. Have a great weekend.